Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And good to see you once again with lecture 17 of Drama 2, that is modern drama. What we are doing nowadays, we are studying a third writer of the course, who is Samuel Beckett, and we are studying his masterpiece, Waiting for Godot. What we did in our last talk, we had a general overview of the drama. We discussed about the summary and all the events in sequence, and we tried to critically analyze the story as well. Towards the end, I also mentioned some of the areas, some of the questions that would need your attention when you are critically analyzing the text. What we are going to do today, we will discuss this play by Samuel Beckett as his attempt as a part of absurdist theatre. So we will discuss this drama, Waiting for Godot, as an absurdist attempt. We will also discuss the dialogue and language of the play, what kind of humor we can find in it, because since it's a tragicomedy, so there is comedy as well. However, what kind of comedy it is and how does it help in enhancing the tragedy is our concern. We will also touch upon the plot and structure of the absurdist drama. We will discuss the themes and we'll move on to the aspects to consider in that regard. So let us start with it. What is absurdist drama? Well, Waiting for Godot, as we have been discussing, is a two-act stage drama classified as a tragicomedy. We know, and I remind you once again, that tragicomedy is a play that is not an entirely tragedy or entirely comedy. In fact, we cannot collect evidences of any of these genre to call it the one, so it becomes a combination of both, where comedy is used in order to enhance the effect of tragedy. So in 1965, critic Martin Esslin basically was the one who coined the term theatre of the absurd to describe this drama and dramas like Waiting for Godot. So as a result, these plays also became known as absurdist dramas. Now, what is this absurdist drama, or what are those spatial elements in these dramas which make them different from the others of their kind and classified them as absurdist? As the name signifies the very meaning of absurdist, something that is absurd, that is not logical. So a group of dramatists in 1940s Paris believed life is without apparent meaning or purpose. It is, in short, absurd, as French playwright and novelist Albert Camus wrote in a 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. The myth of Sisyphus says, paradoxically, the only certainty in life is uncertainty. The absurdist believed. So basically, the absurdist believes in nothingness of life, believes in purposeless of life and uncertainty in life. And it's not the normal uncertainty. These people believe that basically uncertainty is the only aspect that is certain about life. So this paradoxical effect created in this statement makes it highlight and makes us understand what this type of drama basically means. An absurdist drama is a play that depicts life as meaningless, senseless, and uncertain entity. For example, an absurdist story generally ends up where it started. So it's a kind of purposeless, meaningless circle of life which starts nowhere and ends nowhere. It's an ongoing circle of meaningless activity. That's what these people believe. Nothing has been accomplished, nothing has been achieved, nothing has been gained. The characters may be uncertain of time and place. And now when I'm discussing these things, I would want you to recall your memory of the previous lectures on this drama and try to relate things. Try how the characters are talking about things, what are the characters' movement, and how can you relate these things to these aspects that we are discussing today in absurdist drama. Specifically these elements of time and place, they play a very significant role in understanding this concept. And you will find that the characters are virtually the same at the end of the play as they were at the beginning. You will not find any kind of development. The plays that we have studied so far, like Ibsen's play or Kesse's play, you could see a vivid development in the characters, no matter if it is positive or negative, but experiences add into the learnings of these characters, and they accordingly get evolved, they get reformed, and they get developed at least. So however, the absurdist drama keeps this idea that is contrary of the idea that we have been studying so far in modern drama, that there isn't any development, there isn't any movement. It's a kind of static thing. All the time things are getting repeated and starting from the same thing and ending into similar kind of consequences. So there isn't any kind of meaning being produced. All right. So how dialogues and how the language is used in absurdist drama? The language is an absurdist drama often goes nowhere. It is as illogical as other aspects of the absurdist drama are, like the character, the story, the plot, the events, the themes. Just like that, you will find language does not play any important role here. We saw that in Kesse's play, Juno and the Peacock, language plays very important role in letting us understand about the characters, about the thinking pattern they develop over the time, and so many other things. However, language is shown as illogical, the exchange of words is shown as illogical as any other activity associated with the characters. So characters misunderstand or misinterpret one another all the time. They do not, language is shown as another channel, as another medium of interaction between human beings that often results in ambiguity, that often results in confusions, that often results in nothingness. So it does not solve the problem, but adds into it. So frequently responding to a statement or a question with a non sequitur or a ludicrous comment, you will find things are being repeated again and again by these characters, the similar kind of questions, the same kind of answers, and then the same kind of answers are not creating any kind of sense in the drama. So it's a mere repetition of words and mere articulation of language most of the time that we observe in this drama. So if we analyze this drama, and for that we take references from the text, we can see that Estragon, who has a sore foot, is attempting to remove his boot again and again in both the acts, almost in all types of interaction with either with Vladimir or with Pozo and Lucky. You will find Estragon struggling with his boots, either pulling them up or putting them off. So though he tugs hard, it won't come off. Many of the times you will find that he's struggling hard with his boots, but he's not able to take them off. In frustration, he says, nothing to be done. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much effort you put in an act, you do not come up with any kind of result. That's a kind of cynical, and I would say a kind of reaction to life where you do not see things working, where time has taken long in making you wait and you end up losing your hope. So it's a hopeless kind of situation that is shown by Samuel Beckett here. Vladimir replies, I am beginning to come round to that opinion. All my life I have tried to put it from me, saying, Vladimir, be reasonable, you haven't yet tried everything. And I resumed that struggle, telling that I have been struggling all my life and I am still continuously struggling. Vladimir is shown a character who keeps some sense, who keeps some logic. In Act 2, the two men agree that they are happy in spite of their problems. Then Estragon asks, what do we do now that we are happy? So, okay, if we are happy now, what is to be done next? If happiness is the ultimate goal to achieve, we have achieved it so far. So what do we do now? Wait for Godot. So you have to wait, Vladimir says. Things have changed here since yesterday. So probably things have changed. So your happiness, your goal has been changed for today as well. And if he doesn't come, that is the question asked by the character. We'll see when the time comes. I was saying that things have changed here since yesterday. Everything oozes. Look at the tree. It's never the same pass from one moment to the next. So look at the kind of the exchange of words that is going on. Nothingness, hopelessness, meaningless of the activity, and then meaninglessness of the exchange of words is shown very vividly in this conversation. So the absurdity of the dialogue is the author's way of calling our attention to the seeming absurdity of life. So this absurdity is shown into each and every element that a writer puts together, put together in order to make a drama. Whether it's dialogue or it's characterization or it's plotting or the setting or the movement and the activity or any kind of non-verbal devices used by the writer, because we see in this drama we have many pauses and use of silence, and this again is shown a kind of hollowness of life. For Samuel Beckett, the world wobbles on its axis, and the people who inhabit it do not always think logically or talk sensibly. That's what Samuel Beckett believes in. And please try to understand this thing, that we are studying literature. Literature tells us about people and people's lives and cultures and how they do develop and how do they absorb changes. And we understand that this literature is written between two world wars. It was written by the end of the World War I, and it was almost the beginning of World War II when the absurdist drama appeared in the history of modern drama. So the drama, the kind of drama, it depicts the environment, it depicts the thinking patterns of the people, it depicts the mood of the time, how chaotic, how confusing, how ambiguous it was for people who were living over there. So these are not beliefs to accept religiously. These are to think about the time and space where this literature has been produced. So Waiting for Godot contains the deadpan humor of the down and out, the destitute, who copy by making sport of their circumstances and themselves. So it's a deadpan humor that is used by Samuel Beckett. They are like Sisyphus and Tantalus, each doomed forever to seeking a goal that he cannot reach. If you remember, in the beginning we discussed that one of the characteristics of the era of the writing style is the writer being showing or being very cynical in his approach, and it is like finding faults, finding ills of the society, however finding himself unable to fix it up. This helplessness you can see in all these writings. helplessness of human beings, and that is what we can see on its extreme in Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, that human beings are helpless. They are just on receiving end. They are waiting, 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 and waiting. And at times they set goals for themselves which they know they can never achieve. So that's what the absurdist drama promotes. But while trying to reach their goal, Vladimir and Estragon remain cheerful and jocular. So this is one thing that is a little different, that they know that their goal is unachievable somehow, or maybe they are not certain about their goal altogether, and however they remain cheerful, happy and jocular, despite the fact that we understand at times they would lose hope, but then they get burst of motivation and they get back to their aims and goals. The helplessness drollery calls to mind the buffoonery of film comedians Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin and Buster. So we already discussed this, that these characters you can find in Hollywood and even our own Pakistani media. There are characters like that. A full appreciation of the humor requires a close reading of the play and attendance at a performance of it. So if you really want to enjoy the absurdity of such drama, you will need to read it critically and give it a close reading. And it will be even better if you are able to attend a performance like this. Okay, now about plot structure of absurdist drama. Well, like all the other things, the structure of the plot has to be another reflection of absurdity. So the structure of a typical absurdist drama is like a spaceship orbiting Earth, or a Ferris wheel revolving on an axle, or wheel of a car, or wheel of a bus. All these things, the spaceship and the Ferris wheel, or any vehicle's wheel or cycle's wheel, they endlessly repeat their paths. They have to move on and on and on. If only the passengers on these vehicles could break free and fly off on their own, but they cannot. Same is the case with these characters. They are tethered to forces beyond their control. The same is true of Vladimir and Estragon in Waiting for Godot. They wait for Godot at the beginning of the play, wait for Godot in the middle of the play, and wait for Godot at the end of the play as well. Godot never comes. So Vladimir and Estragon continue to revolve but never evolve. There isn't any development. They are waiting, waiting and waiting. They are caught in the absurdity of continuously moving but never progressing. So here the first contrast is between moving and progressing. You move on, but progressing is different. Development is different. Now, a word about different themes in the play. This play has numerous themes, and you can find, although I'm going to enlist many of them, however, you can still find more if you pay this little close reading and some more attention. So, the very first theme that comes out of the play is the theme of choices. Waiting for Godot consists of two men unable to act, move or think in any significant way while they kill time waiting for a mysterious man, Godot. The characters fail to realize that this very act of waiting is a choice. Instead, they view it as a mandatory part of their daily routine. They are unable to understand that it is a choice to be made. Even when these men manage to make a conscious decision, they can't translate that mental choice into a physical act. They never act upon their decisions. They often decide to leave the stage and stop waiting for Godot, only to find that they are unable to move is the end of the activity. Such inaction leads to stagnancy and repetition in the seemingly endless cycle of their lives. So it's a theme of choice that comes out of this act. Now, what kind of questions can come up on this theme of choice? With very first theme, I am trying to develop a kind of pattern for you to understand. First, I am discussing the theme, then I am discussing the question that can be considered in order to describe that theme inside, and then I am going to take some references from the text that will help you understand how can you describe that theme in the presence of theme in the text. However, I may not be following this pattern for all of the themes that I'll be discussing later. I want you to do it yourself, to look at the different types of questions, how can you answer them, look at different themes and how can you substantiate these themes and support them from the text and dialogues taken from the text. So, the question that can ask you about your understanding of the theme of choice can be, what is the barrier between the decision to act and action itself in Waiting for Godot? Why are the men unable to move after they have decided to do so? So, this question deals with the theme of choice. Are Vladimir and Estragon condemned to wait for Godot? Or is it the act of waiting a choice itself? Does Lucky's position as a servant seem to be a choice on his part? Since we get to know that they have been together since 60 years and now the master is going to get rid of the servant. However, we still find both together, helping each other, supporting each other in time of need. Well, so you are to find answers for these questions. And some thinking call on this aspect, on the theme of choice. If Vladimir and Estragon realized they had the freedom of choice, they could break their daily cycle of habit and inaction. The problem is one of the consciousness. So if they could get this consciousness, this awareness, do you think they will break this monotony? Alright, and how can they get this awareness? Vladimir and Estragon are fully aware of their situation. This is the second opinion. And of their ability to choose, but the uncertainty surrounding the result of any potential action prevents them from breaking the stagnant cycle of their waiting. The unfruitfulness of activity, the purposelessness of the activity, since they believe that each activity ends into nothingness and will take you back from where they started, makes them, prevents them from acting. So what would you go with? Which idea would you support and why is a thinking call. I want you to think about it and note down your points for that. If I want to discuss the theme of choice, how can I collect evidences from the text and what kind of evidences will be fruitful? So here are some examples. I've taken a quote and it's Vladimir speaking, and it says that two thieves crucified at the same time as our Savior. One, Estragon, our what? Vladimir, our Savior. Two thieves, one is supposed to have been saved and the other, he searches for the contrary of saved, damned. Vladimir's story of the two thieves reminds us of the frequent absence of choice in an uncertain world. Neither thief chose to be damned or be saved, but were subject to arbitrary chances. So that is one of the examples. The other example can be, again, Estragon speaking, I'm going. He does not move. So, making a decision, however, the inability to act on the decision. The ability to choose is rendered useless when a decision cannot be joined with action. This seems constantly to be the case in Waiting for Godot. Another reference from the text, Estragon speaking here, and this is Act 1. Who believes him? Vladimir, everybody. It's the only version they know. Estragon, people are bloody ignorant apes. Waiting for Godot argues that people are driven to beliefs by habits, popularity, and ignorance rather than by conscious choice. Another reference from the text. Let's go. Estragon, and then Vladimir, we can't. Estragon, why not? Vladimir, we are waiting for Godot. This dialogue with a similar kind of occurrences you will find throughout the text. For Vladimir, the act of waiting for Godot prevents him from choosing any other course of action. Yet, his decision to wait for Godot at all is a choice in itself. If he realized the radical personal freedom afforded to him by choice, he could decide to leave the stage, but he never did it. So, another quote from Estragon: an Englishman having drunk a little more than usual proceeds to a brothel. The bard asks him if he wants a fair one, a dark one, or a red-haired one. Go on. So, we have to explain this joke in order for us to make our argument. One reference is a very reputable scholar. The rest of the joke basically is that the Englishman has to decide whether he wants a blonde or a redhead partner. He chooses and is led through one of 3 doors. He is then faced with 2 doors and asked another choice, this time in regard to the upper half of the female body and size. He chooses and is led through another door. So it's basically the joke that is cracked deals with the sequence of choices that a person has to make. And the context of the joke, however, represents the thinking, the activities, or the indulgence of the people of that era, of that time, or the only recreation that they can have. And here is another quote by Estragon. He is then faced with 2 doors and asked to choose again, this time based on size and the lower half of the female anatomy. At the end, the Englishman walks through a door only to find himself alone and back on the street. The relevance in this theme is that the Englishman makes a series of choices which are essentially arbitrary and cannot ultimately determine the course of his action, like much of Waiting for Godot. So, similarly, you are suggested to take reference from the text in order to substantiate your themes. And I have another quote from Act 1 again. It's a dialogue by Estragon. What exactly did we ask him? What exactly did we ask him for? Vladimir, oh, nothing very definite. Estragon, a kind of prayer. And what did he reply? That he would see. That he couldn't promise anything? That he would have to think it over. Consult his family, his friends, his agents. So, now, the second theme that we are coming up with is theme of philosophical viewpoints, the absurd, the useless things. Waiting for Godot is hailed as a classic example of theatre of the absurd. Dramatic works that promote the philosophy of its name. This particular play presents a world in which daily actions are without meaning, without sense, without purpose. Language fails to effectively communicate, and the characters at times reflect a sense of artifice, even wondering aloud whether perhaps they are on the stage or not. So in the second theme, we find that it is about the absurdity of life. And Vladimir and Estragon's situation is so absurd, it's so meaningless that it doesn't resemble any reality we are familiar with. How is it possible then that the play can comment on our own lives? Does Beckett suggest a level of absurdity in the real world? Well, do Estragon and Vladimir recognize that their actions are absurd, or does everything seem normal to them? So these are the questions you have to think about the absurdity of the play. How do the absurd characters of Pozzo and Lucky comment on Gogo and Didi. Gogo and Didi are the nicknames of Estragon and Vladimir, who seems more rational. At one moment is the play metafictional. In other words, where do the characters seem to reveal an understanding that they are part of a contrived reality? How does this affect the way we see the play? Well, you have to think about these questions. Now, the next theme that comes up is a theme of truth in Waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot is a play driven by a lack of truth. In other words, uncertainty and lies. Characters are unable to act in any meaningful way and claim this is so because they are uncertain of the consequences. Whatever they do, they are not sure what will happen. A boy, a messenger bringing Godot's message every day that he's not coming today, however, will come tomorrow, will surely come tomorrow. And then when Godot never comes up is a kind of certainty of uncertainty that characters are facing. Without the presence of objective truth, every statement is brought to question, and even common labels, color, time, names become arbitrary and subjective. So, what kind of questions can up regarding this theme? After the debate over whether or not to attempt suicide, Estragon concludes in Act 1, don't let's do anything. It's safer. Is doing anything safer? Vladimir and Estragon are constantly faced with uncertainty of consequence and as such choose not to choose. So what they are choosing is not to choose. But what is the consequence of not choosing in this play? The play stands stagnant. Can we even be certain of this? Well, the third theme that comes up in the play is the theme of life, consciousness and existence. The very existence of the things is challenged in the drama. The portrait of daily life painted by Waiting for Godot is a dismal one. It is repetitive and stagnant. It lacks meaning and purpose and entails perpetual suffering. Well, the solution, which none of the characters take basically, would seem to be action and choice despite the ever-presence of uncertainty, inaction, and an awareness of one's surroundings and past actions. As one character says, habit is a great deadener. Our actions should stem from conscious choice rather than apathy. So, what is the presence of life and consciousness and existence in the play is basically the reasons of the absurdity in this play. And what kind of questions can be there in order to assess your understanding of these phenomena? What is the value of life in Waiting for Godot? Life in everything, in characters, in events, in plot, in story, in their beliefs. Pozo claims that life has no meaning because it is fleeting. Vladimir counters that life has no meaning because we deadened it with habit of not choosing, habit of not acting, habit of waiting. Which statement, if either, does the play support? So, next question can be, Vladimir wonders towards the end of Act 2 whether or not he is even awake, whether or not they are on the right place, whether or not it's the right date and day to meet Godot. Why does it take him until now to ask this question? What has happened over the course of the play that might have led him to this condition of doubt, this air of uncertainty? Does asking this question symbolize any sort of transition for him? So you have to answer this. The next theme that comes up is a theme of time. It's timelessness. Time presents a slew of problems in Waiting for Godot. The very title of the play reveals its central action, waiting. So its title keeps the very significance of this time element, that is waiting. The two main characters are forced to whittle away their days while anticipating the arrival of a man who never comes. Because they have nothing to do in the meantime, time is a dreaded barrier, a test of their ability to endure. And what they do is then, what they find human beings source of killing their time. So they play with them. Because they repeat the same actions every day, time is cyclical. That every character seems to have a faulty memory further complicates matters. Time loses meaning when the actions of one day have no relevance or certainty on the next. How critical that situation is, and how critical the element of time is over here, played by Samuel Beckett. Okay, so what kind of questions can be asked regarding your understanding of time in this play? Characters in Waiting for Godot repeatedly forget the events of yesterday, or they are experiencing the removal of their short-term memory. If memory is faulty and one cannot remember past actions, do these actions have any meaning? What meaning is associated with this forgetfulness? Is it a kind of escapism? Can we trust Vladimir and Estragon's memories of events that have supposedly occurred before the start of the play? If it is so, if they do not remember what happened yesterday, what about those things that they keep on repeating that have happened in their lives? Can we trust their statements? Can they be true? Does time pass any differently in Act 2 than it does in Act 1? If the difference is there, what difference is there? So the next theme is theme of religion that comes up in the text. Religion is incompatible with reason in Waiting for Godot. Characters who attempt to understand religion logically are left in the dark, and the system is compared to such absurd banalities as switching bowler hats or taking a boot on and off. Religion is also tied to uncertainty, since there is no way of knowing what is objectively true in the realm of faith. Since we understand that sometimes Estragon calls himself Adam, and many of times the figure of Godot is showing similar to of God, where God never comes, and God is making false promises to these characters. So, well, this is the belief demonstrated in this play, and this is how religion is perceived in that time, because of the ambiguity of the time, because of the chaos around, because of the cruelty of time in life and people. This is how people started believing in religion and associating their own interpretations with their reasoning of the religion. So a question can be that who has a better understanding of religion in the play, Vladimir or Estragon, and how do you prove that? We have said that in Waiting for Godot, religion is incompatible with logic. If this is true, what's the next step? Does the play argue that we should accept religion despite its lack of rationality, or that we should reject it for the same reasons? If Godot is a representation of God, what do Vladimir and Estragon expect will happen if he does finally show up? Well, that is a kind of question that gives you your imagination a call, a thinking call. Another very important theme is theme of friendship. Well, friendship is tricky in Waiting for Godot, as each character is fundamentally isolated from every other. However, relationship teeter between a fear of loneliness and an essential inability to connect and to survive without each other. This tension is central to the play, and you will see in between both the pairs, Estragon and Vladimir, as well as in Lucky and Pozo. The problems that keep characters apart vary from physical disgust to ego to a fear of others' suffering. So I am categorizing them into these bigger categories: fear of loneliness, fear of this fundamental reliance that is being shown, this inability to connect, this ability to act, that again goes under reliance. Then this disgust, physical disgust that they bear because of each other, then their ego, their hurt egos, and fear of others suffering or taking the sufferings of other if they get in touch with them. So the question can be, what is the best term to describe Vladimir and Estragon's relationship? Will you call it friendship? Are they friends, companions, master and slave, or mere acquaintances? Vladimir and Estragon constantly ask whether they would be better off without each other. So, would they be? Of Vladimir and Estragon, which man is more eager to draw closer and which man is more hesitant? You have to see and collect your evidences for that. Another theme that comes up is theme of freedom and confinement. Every character in Waiting for Godot seems to live in a prison from where he wants to get free. However, this prison is of his own making, prison of his own choice that we discussed in the first few slides. Each is confined to a state of passivity, of not doing anything, of inactivity and stagnancy, a stagnant position, a silent paused state by his own inability to act, to move. The one character who is literally the slave of another is no more restricted than those who are technically free in the play. So although technically and physically they are shown different characters, one is physically a slave and the other is free, however in real they all are the same. In fact, he may be more free because he is at least aware of his imprisonment. So the theme of awareness, consciousness, is this point can be related to that as well. Does Lucky choose to be a slave? Well, why does Vladimir want to play the part of Lucky when he is pretending with Estragon? What is the reason behind that? What do you think? Between Estragon and Vladimir, who has more freedom? Well, I am asking you all these questions because I want you to put together your answers and put together your reflections. How do you understand this play? Because making meaning is a very important aspect of literature studying. If you are studying literature and if you are not able to construct meaning out of it, then it is not of great use that you are making of it. So another theme is theme of suffering, theme of pain, theme of agony. So suffering is a constant and fundamental part of human existence in Waiting for Godot particularly. Every character suffers and suffers always, a constant suffering from the beginning till the end, without any hope or without any action that could give them the hope of any improvement in their suffering, with no seeming respite in sight. There is no ray of hope, there is no silver lining. The hardship ranges from the physical to the mental, the minor to the extreme, and one thing is that they are pain. The second, that they are in constant pain. The third thing is they are pain since the beginning till ever. The fourth thing is that there are types of pain. They are not only physical pain, they are in mental pain. They have all the types of all the intensities of pain, minor and majors. So this gives you an idea of the intensity of the situation. It drives some men to find companionship, causes others to abuse their companions, and for still others leads to self-isolation. Watching people suffer is a kind of anguish on its own. So this companionship this suffering, basically makes them decide different things at times. Someone would fall for a companionship. Someone would, as Estragon and Vladimir are, you would find them saying they should, they should part away, they should go away from each other, and then they stick together. This suffering would make the other couple, the other pair to, get rid of each other, like Lucky and Pozo. And some people are who are led to self-isolate, who are living in companionship, but they are isolated in themselves. So this is how suffering is a kind of anguish on its own. So the question can be, what is the worst kind of suffering we see in Waiting for Godot? What do you think is the worst kind of pain, and who is the character who is bearing it? Have Estragon and Vladimir ever been happy? You think so? How do they define their happiness? Because happiness is the achievement of one's desire. What can be their happiness? How would you define their happiness? Because in times of suffering, when we find them in times of suffering inside the play, they're calling themselves happy, that we are happy now. That's what they call. So how do you define their happiness? Is there any purpose served by Gogo and Dee Dee's suffering? Do they learn from it? Well, the learning is very important question here, because it relates to the development, to the progressiveness. And since we already established that play shows very less movement, so how far do you think it shows progressiveness and development? Okay, another theme is theme of mortality. Well, none of the characters in Waiting for Godot shy away from the fact that death is inevitable. In fact, death becomes at times a solution for the inanity of daily life. That's what is shown in the play. The main characters contemplate suicide as though it were as harmless as a walk to the grocery store. Probably because there's nothing in their life worth sticking around for anyway. You remember their conversation about hanging themselves with tree, and they are postponing it, and they are conversing it in a way that, okay, if we are not able to do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow while we are waiting for Godot. As you're talking about, keeping a walk for as daily routine. They ultimately do not commit suicide, although that they talk about it a lot and repeatedly. They do not commit it because they claim not to have the means, but also because they are uncertain of the results, whether they will die or not, of their attempts. It may work, it may fail. So again, uncertainty is a reason to this theme of mortality as well, because they can't be sure of what their action will bring. They decide on no action at all in this case. So when they are not aware of the results, they find it better of not doing anything, of doing nothing rather. So what kind of questions can be asked about the theme of mortality? Why do Estragon and Vladimir want to kill themselves? Why would they want to finish themselves? Why don't they? What is the reason of this inability to act upon this decision? If death is inevitable and ever impending, as Pozo points out, how do we live our lives with any sense of purpose? Does Waiting for Godot propose a solution to this problem? Well, then there is theme of hope. Vladimir and Estragon are lowly bumps. Their only material possessions, besides their tattered clothes, are a turnip and a carrot. Nevertheless, they have not given up on life. They do not descend into depression, pessimism, and cynicism. You see that they have turnip and a carrot. It is shown the nothingness of the hope, the triviality, how trivial the hope is, how useless this is, the short span of life that these items keep. But at the same time, you will find that these items, no matter how worthless they are, they do not let them get into depression, pessimism, or cynicism. They are keeping the hope that Godot will come. and waiting. Even though, and in their wait, they are cheerful and they are happy. They are not crying all the time, though they do cry, but not all the time. So there is a ray of hope that they are generating for each other and generating for themselves too. Even though they frequently exchange insults, they get frustrated. They enjoy each other's company and help each other in letting the time go by, in passing the time. Above all, though, they wait. They wait for Godot. They do not know who he is or where he comes from or even when he would come, but they wait just the same, apparently because he represents hope. Okay, so Vladimir and Estragon are, now this is theme of search for meaning. Vladimir and Estragon are homeless rovers attempting to find an answer to a question all human beings face. What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? Godot may have the answer for them, and that is why probably they are waiting for Godot. So they wait. After Godot fails to appear on the first day, they return to the tree and the next day to continue waiting. Tree is very symbolic here, and we will discuss the symbolism when we are addressing this question in one of the coming lectures. However, the Godot does not come. Waiting, Vladimir and Estragon decide to leave the area. However, the stage direction at the end of the play says they do not move. They do not move at all. Apparently, they plan to continue their search for meaning by continuing their wait for Godot. So it's search for meaning, search for hope rather. And theme of dependency. They are relying on each other. They are depending on each other. Vladimir and Estragon depend on each other to survive. Although they exchange insults and at times they would say that they would want to leave each other, get rid of each other, and it will be better for them if they part now. However, they do not do that. It is clear that they value each other's company. One would imagine Pozzo without Lucky until the second act, when the audience learns he has gone blind. Unable to find his way, Pozzo is totally dependent on Lucky. Lucky, of course, is tied to Pozzo by a rope, a physical limitation, and by fear of being abandoned. Okay, so then there is theme of monotony, the most prevailing theme. Life is tedious and repetitive for Vladimir and Estragon. In the first act of the play, they meet at a tree to wait for Godot. In the second end, they meet at the same tree to wait for Godot. Irish critic Vivian once wrote in a review of the play, "Nothing happens twice." That's a very interesting comment. So, what are the other aspects to consider? We need to address symbolism and some questions to consider, so you to think about them, and probably I can address these questions in the next lecture. Author Beckett repeatedly denied that he intended any person, thing or idea in the play as a specific symbol. Well, however, the reader is free to interpret the play and the mind of Beckett. At the very least, the reader or playgoer, the moviegoers, may wish to consider the following questions. Do Vladimir and Estragon represent humankind as fallen children of Adam and Eve and their original sins? The motive of redemption occurs several times in the play, notably when Vladimir speaks of Christ as the Savior. On the last page of the play, in most texts, Estragon asks what will happen if Godot comes. Vladimir answers, "Will be saved." Is the tree intended to be a symbol of the cross on which Christ was crucified? Keep in mind that Vladimir and Estragon discuss the thieves crucified with Christ. So, I'm leaving you with these questions. Basically, in this lecture, I aimed at opening up the areas of concern. As far as themes are concerned, I discussed many themes and gave you stingers and gave you pointers to go deep into them. And then I gave you several questions, several directions to think regarding these themes where you can put your reflections under them and you can prepare your ideas. And I'm leaving you these typical questions regarding symbolism so you to think about them, and I'm going to inshallah address them in the next lecture. The tree is bare when Vladimir and Estragon meet near it on the first day. However, on the second day, author Beckett says in his stage direction, it has 4 or 5 leaves. Do the leaves symbolize hope, new life? Does Godot represent God, as some essayists maintain? Bear in mind that at least a dozen French words, not counting suffix, prefixes, and inflectional forms, begin with the first 3 letters of the same, including goddess, godder, godelier, godet, godech, godichin. So there are many words like that. Do you think Godot can by any chance be a word for God here? When Pozo asks who Godot is, Estragon answers, personally I wouldn't even know him if I saw him. Estragon appears to be answering truthfully, nevertheless. So, that is all what we did in today's talk. We discussed the absurdity of drama and the absurdist drama and waiting for Godot for that regard. We analyzed what kind of dialogues and language use is there in a absurdist drama, and what kind of humor can be produced by including comedy in such plays. We discussed the plot and structure of the absurdist drama in general, and we tried to find those elements in Waiting for Godot. We discussed many themes in Waiting for Godot, and I gave you many stingers and directions to think about those and try to answer them. We also discussed some questions regarding symbolism in the end of this talk, and I want you to think about them so I can address them in one of our coming lectures. Let's see what we have for our next talk. We are going to discuss about symbolism, the use of symbolism in Waiting for Godot. We will discuss Waiting for Godot for its genre, tone, style, and title. We will discuss the drama as the plot of tragedy, and we will discuss the social acceptance of Waiting for Godot, and we will see how can we critically analyze this aspect. This was all for today. I'll see you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.